very, very nervous about the extent to which China has effectively spied on us, stolen many of our industrial secrets. I'm worried about the extent to which they've infiltrated, using money, British universities. We must be cautious about the relationship. But I think what the Starmer trip shows you is that his mindset is where we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, David Cameron thought China was the great future for this country. Everything's changed in that last decade. Keir Starmer hasn't.
Right, so Nigel Farage is nervous. Nigel Farage, the man who once stood in front of a poster that would make your gran clutch her pearls, the bloke who's made a career out of being about as subtle as a brick through a greenhouse window, is now telling us he's nervous. Not angry, not outraged, not frothing at the mouth with righteous indignation, but nervous. And you know what? When Nigel Farage starts sounding like your mum before you go on a school trip, it's time to pay attention. Because what's got him all jittery? Keir Starmer's cosy little relationship with China. Yeah, that China. The one with the Great Wall, the pandas, and, oh right, the industrial espionage and university infiltration. But before we dive into this geopolitical soap opera, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon, because British politics just got a whole lot more complicated and you don't want to miss what happens next. So let's set the scene here. Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, the human equivalent of beige wallpaper, has been making trips to China like it's a Costco run. He's over there shaking hands, signing agreements, probably sipping some very expensive tea while nodding thoughtfully at trade deals. Meanwhile, back home, Nigel Farage is on GB News basically having a minor panic attack about the whole thing. And honestly, the optics are absolutely delicious. It's like watching your sensible accountant friend suddenly announce they're worried about your other mate who's just started a pyramid scheme. You sit up and take notice. Farage isn't mincing words either. He's gone full security briefing mode, talking about Chinese spying, stolen industrial secrets, infiltration of British universities with cash, the whole James Bond villain checklist. And here's the kicker. He's comparing Starmer's approach to David Cameron's strategy from a decade ago. Remember 2015? Cameron was rolling out the red carpet for Chinese investment like Britain was having a closing down sale. Everything must go. Democracy, strategic assets, nuclear power stations. Come get your bargains. It was the golden era of Sino-British relations, when we genuinely thought China was going to bankroll us to prosperity without any strings attached. Spoiler alert, there were strings. So many strings it looked like a particularly aggressive game of cat cradle. But let's rewind for a second, because this Cameron comparison is absolutely crucial to understanding why Nigel Farage is having kittens over this. Back in the mid-2010s, Cameron and George Osborne were essentially China's biggest fanboys. They wanted Chinese investment in everything. Infrastructure? Yes, please. Technology? Absolutely. Nuclear power? Sure. What could possibly go wrong with letting a foreign superpower have a stake in your energy security? It was all very Global Britain before Global Britain became a post-Brexit marketing slogan that nobody quite believed in. The thinking was simple. China has money, we want money, let's be friends. Economics over politics, business over concerns about human rights or geopolitical rivalry. It was pragmatic, it was optimistic, and with hindsight, it was possibly a tiny bit naive. Fast forward to now, and the world has changed faster than a British weather forecast. We've had Hong Kong's democracy dismantled, we've seen the Uyghur situation in Xinjiang, there's been the whole TikTok data security panic, Huawei got banned from our 5G network after initially being welcomed, and suddenly everyone's realized that maybe, just maybe, treating China like it's just another trading partner was the geopolitical equivalent of leaving your house keys under the doormat and wondering why your stuff keeps going missing. And this is where it gets properly interesting, because Farage specifically mentioned universities, and oh boy, has that become a pressure point. British universities are absolutely swimming in Chinese money. We're talking hundreds of millions of pounds in tuition fees, research partnerships, Confucius institutes popping up like Starbucks outlets. On paper, it's brilliant. International collaboration, cultural exchange, funding for research that might not happen otherwise. In practice, there are concerns, legitimate ones, about academic freedom, about research being used for military purposes, about Chinese students being monitored by their own government while studying here, about self-censorship on sensitive topics like Taiwan, Tibet, or Xinjiang. It's created this incredibly awkward situation where universities desperately need the money because government funding has been slashed to ribbons, but accepting it comes with complications that make a Facebook relationship status look simple. So where does Keir Starmer fit into all this? Well, according to Farage, Starmer is operating with a 2015 mindset in a 2025 world. He's essentially accusing the Prime Minister of being about a decade behind on the threat assessment, which in geopolitical terms is like bringing a calculator to a quantum computing conference. Starmer's approach seems to be focused on economic pragmatism. We need trade. China's a massive economy. We can't afford to completely alienate them, so let's engage. It's not entirely unreasonable. Britain isn't America. We can't just sanction half the world and shrug it off. We're a medium-sized island nation trying to find our footing after Brexit, and turning away investment isn't exactly a luxury we can afford when the economy's doing its best impression of a three-legged horse in the Grand National. But here's where Farage has a point, even if it pains me to say it. The geopolitical landscape has shifted. China, under Xi Jinping, is more assertive, more nationalistic, more willing to flex its muscles economically and militarily. The relationship between China and the West has fundamentally changed. It's not the optimistic engagement of the early 2000s anymore, it's strategic competition. It's about supply chain security, critical infrastructure, technological independence, and making sure your rival doesn't have the ability to turn off your lights or steal your research. The Americans have pivoted hard. They've gone from engagement to containment faster than you can say trade war. Europe is getting increasingly nervous, and Britain? We're still trying to figure out which side of the fence to sit on, which is awkward when the fence is made of barbed wire and is also on fire.
Let's talk about the spying, because Farage went straight there, and honestly, it's the juicy bit everyone wants to hear about. Industrial espionage isn't some conspiracy theory cooked up by people who've watched too many spy thrillers. It's real, it's documented, and it's been happening for years. Chinese state-sponsored hackers have been linked to breaches of government departments, defense contractors, universities, tech companies, you name it. The goal? Steal intellectual property, get technological secrets, save billions on research and development by just nicking someone else's work. It's like copying someone's homework, but on a national scale and with way more serious consequences. MI5 has been warning about this for ages. The former head of MI5 literally gave a speech about the unprecedented threat from Chinese espionage. They've issued warnings to businesses, to universities, to anyone who'll listen. There have been arrests, there have been exposure operations, there have been diplomatic incidents. This isn't theoretical, it's happening. And it's not just cyber stuff either. It's people being recruited, it's academic partnerships being exploited, it's investment being used as a Trojan horse to access sensitive sectors. The Chinese government plays the long game better than anyone, and they're very, very good at it. But here's Starmer's impossible position. He can't just slam the door on China because economics. China's our fourth largest trading partner. They buy our goods, we buy their goods. Supply chains are intertwined like earphones that have been in your pocket for 5 minutes. British businesses want access to Chinese markets. The City of London wants to remain a hub for Chinese finance. Universities, as we've mentioned, are financially dependent on Chinese students. Completely decoupling isn't realistic without massive economic pain, and Starmer's already dealing with an economy that's about as robust as a chocolate teapot in a sauna. So he's trying to walk this absurd tightrope, engage economically but be cautious strategically, welcome investment but screen it for security risks, maintain academic links but protect research. It's the political equivalent of trying to pat your head and rub your stomach while riding a unicycle over a shark tank. Possible? Maybe. Advisable? Debatable. Likely to satisfy everyone? Absolutely not. The left thinks he's too close to an authoritarian regime. The right thinks he's being naive about national security. The business community wants more engagement. The security services want less. Everyone's got an opinion, and they're all contradictory. Now, we should probably address the elephant in the room. This is Nigel Farage we're talking about. The man's political brand is built on finding threats and amplifying them to 11. That's not necessarily a criticism, it's just a statement of fact. He did it with the EU, he's doing it with immigration, and now he's doing it with China. And look, sometimes he has a point, broken clocks and all that. But we also need to recognize that Farage has a vested interest in making Starmer look weak, naive, or dangerous. That's literally his job as opposition leader. Reform UK needs to differentiate itself, and we're tougher on China than Labour is a pretty easy sell to voters who are already suspicious of foreign influence. Does that mean he's wrong? Not necessarily. You can have ulterior motives and still be correct about the substance. The concerns about Chinese espionage are real. The worries about academic infiltration are legitimate. The criticism that Britain's China policy is muddled and outdated has merit. But it's worth remembering that Farage isn't exactly offering detailed alternative policy proposals here. It's easy to be nervous from the opposition benches. It's considerably harder to actually navigate these waters when you're in government and have to balance security concerns with economic realities. Zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture, because this isn't just about Starmer or Farage or even Britain, really. This is about the fundamental question facing every Western democracy right now. How do you deal with China? It's too big to ignore, too integrated into the global economy to completely decouple from, too strategically important to write off, but also too authoritarian, too aggressive, and too willing to use economic leverage as a political weapon to just trust blindly. It's the defining geopolitical question of our era, and nobody's figured out the answer yet. The Americans have gone for strategic competition and technological decoupling. The Europeans are trying to de-risk while maintaining engagement. The Australians got economically punished for standing up to Chinese pressure. Smaller nations are getting caught in the middle of a new Cold War they never asked for. And Britain? We're trying to have our cake and eat it, be a bridge between America and Europe, maintain the special relation while pursuing independent trade policy, be tough on security while welcoming investment. It's exhausting just describing it, let alone actually implementing it as coherent policy. So what happens next? Well, that's the million-pound question, isn't it? Starmer's going to continue engaging with China because he doesn't have much choice economically. Farage is going to continue criticizing him for it because that's politically advantageous. The security services will keep issuing warnings that get ignored until something dramatic happens. Universities will keep taking Chinese money until the government either funds them properly or forces them to stop. British businesses will keep trying to access Chinese markets, complaining about Chinese competition, and the rest of us will watch this slow-motion car crash unfold while wondering if anyone actually has a plan. The honest truth, there isn't a good answer here. Every option comes with trade-offs. Be too tough on China and you damage your economy and lose influence. Be too soft and you compromise security and look weak. Try to thread the needle and you end up satisfying nobody while probably getting the worst of both worlds. It's a genuine dilemma, and anyone who tells you they have a simple solution is either lying or hasn't thought it through properly. But here's what we should be demanding from our politicians: clarity, consistency, an actual strategy that's been thought through beyond the next election cycle. We need to know what our red lines are with China. We need universities to be properly funded so they're not dependent on foreign money that comes with strings attached. We need investment screening that actually works. We need to rebuild domestic industrial capacity so we're not completely reliant on Chinese supply chains for critical goods. We need honest conversations about what we're willing to sacrifice for economic growth versus what we're not. And we need politicians who can articulate this without being either naive optimists or paranoid isolationists. Is Farage right to be nervous? Yeah, probably. Is Starmer wrong to engage? Not necessarily. The truth, as always, is somewhere in the complicated, messy middle where nothing is simple and everything is a trade-off. Welcome to 21st century geopolitics. It's exactly as fun as it sounds. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.